Donald Trump's love of disruption and loyalty has been the name of the game this term. But how could that affect national and international security? Is Canada at greater threat now than under previous administrations? Joining us to discuss this is former senior CSIS official Dan Stanton. Dan, so much to talk about on national security. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Mercedes.
You look south of the border, and it's just all of the things are going on at once down there through your lens of experience. How would you describe to Canadians what is happening inside the U.S. national security establishment right now?
Well, it's very sad what we're seeing unfold. What's happening essentially is Trump is degrading the efficiency of the U.S. intelligence community, breaking up the FBI, buyouts, the CIA, other agencies as well. And that is basically positioning the United States for another 9/11. And by extension, Canada's vulnerable. So a weakened national security from the United States impacts on us, and it's just horrible to watch.
There's a lot of concern about Trump's relationship with Russia. He last week talked about settling the war between Russia and Ukraine without Ukraine at the table, just sitting down with Russia. Of course, Tulsi Gabbard, the now confirmed Director of National Intelligence, has said things in the past that have been clearly supportive of Putin. How do you interpret that relationship between the Trump administration and the Russians, and what it will mean for allies like us?
Well, it means an awful lot. First of all, Ms. Gelfard has, been sympathetic towards Putin, has been sympathetic to Snowden. And so a lot of the values we share and things we have in common in terms of national security are being upended in the United States. And so when you also look at the United States with their president moving into a rather friendly way with Vladimir Putin, you've got to look at all the intelligence equities there as well. A lot of the allies, including Canada, have been working against Russian intelligence, have been working in support of the Ukraine. And so that will impact on sharing with the United States, because the priorities are going to shift.
I look at our northern border in the Arctic, and the reality is that we are very close to Russia if you go north, geographically speaking, and a lot of concerns there for Canadian national security, especially with some of the things that Donald Trump has said about Canada becoming the 51st state, and, well, if we're going to pay for your defense, then we're going to take over, essentially. But one of the concerns that we've been hearing is the possibility that the U.S. could cut off intelligence sharing with Canada. Obviously, the U.S. has a huge network of eyes all over the world. There's some concern that could jeopardize Canadian national security. People are saying, what if they don't warn us when they find out there could be a terrorist attack? Do you see that as a scenario that could play out? I
don't see that as a likely scenario in terms of what we call security intelligence, which is terrorism and espionage. Canada does receive a lot of what we call non-threat foreign intelligence. This is political reporting, economic reporting that the U.S. agencies provide to the government of Canada to shape various foreign policies. Some of that could be cut back. Some of that could be spun a little bit. But the lion's share of the security intelligence, which we get on weapons of mass destruction, terrorist attacks, espionage, spies, I seriously doubt any of that would be cut back. Because the people working in these agencies, American intelligence, are professionals. They're not robots. They don't immediately shift in terms of focus and priority just because of a change in leadership in Washington. And so if there's going to be let's say a terrorism threat in Canada, it's highly unlikely that the Canadian government is not going to get that information from their U.S. partners.
Is there a world now where we see the tremendous assets and capabilities that the United States has in things like listening, spying, being turned against Canada as an ally to accomplish Donald Trump's goals?
The potential's there. Last week, Wall Street Journal, there was an article quoting an aide to John Ratcliffe, who's the new CIA director, and he said directly that the United States government will very likely be targeting countries in the Western Hemisphere using espionage to support the president's trade policies. So that translates into the U.S. could very well target Canada, government, private sector, to get information to support tariffs, any subsequent trade war. And that's new in terms of a Five Eyes partner using all their architecture, all their resources of intelligence against Canada. It's something we need to watch for.
And what would that look like in terms of the kinds of capabilities that they might use to spy on Canada and get economic information?
Well, it would be hard from what we call human. It would be hard, for example, the CIA to cultivate Canadians, let's say in the government, to commit treason for Donald Trump. That's less likely. But if we look at agencies like the National Security Agency, the SIGINT Agency, and some others, some of those resources could be directed at Canada, Canadian Telecommunications.
So they could be listening to phone calls or emails?
They could. It's conceivable. Now, it's going to take a long time to do that. It also depends how much MAGA ideology seeps down into the core business of those agencies. But I think in some ways the U.S. government has telegraphed that possibility in this battle we have over tariffs.
So you could have a situation where the president tells the National Security Agency, which monitors phone calls, whatever, up here, they can monitor us because we're Canadians, there's no restrictions. We want you to listen in to the Prime Minister, or we want you to listen to major industries and how they're calculating, intercept that information, and then use it to essentially get ahead of us in the chess game.
Absolutely. Look at Ms. Merkel's phone in 2013 with the Snowden revelations. The NSA had listened to Ms. Merkel's personal phone. That had absolutely nothing to do with national security. That's what we call foreign intelligence, non-threat related, using their resources to serve the national interest as defined by Donald Trump. I think it's a possibility.
One of the things that the Trump administration has been doing is getting rid of some of the most experienced intelligence operators in the CIA and the FBI, offering buyout packages, now starting to push people out more actively. What effect could that have for global security, especially as the U.S. is talking about dealing with Russia closely, being in Gaza, taking over there and operating, the possibility of U.S. troops moving in there, and now you have the people who remember the war on terror perhaps no longer there at all?
It's a terrible prospect. What he's doing is terrible, because you're going to have people who don't know what they're doing going into management positions in these agencies, and we're going to lose our eye on the target. So all those threats, whether it's ISIS, whether it's Russians, Chinese, so on, there's a risk that coverage is going to be disrupted as those agencies are turned inside, directed at Americans. Look what's going on to the FBI. It's just heartbreaking. They're breaking the organization up. They're driving people out. They're prosecuting, potentially prosecuting special agents who worked on the January 6th investigation. So that also means American capability on, for example, counterterrorism is being reduced. And that's making the world a more dangerous place, and that has implications for Canada.
What does Canada need to do to prepare for this very different and potentially more dangerous world?
Well, I suspect on the operational level and our intelligence agencies is still business as usual with the Americans. But we do have to keep an eye out for, at some point, there may be a shift, and those resources of what has been an ally could be directed at us. It would take a while. My question would be, how long will it take for that MAGA ideology to seep into those agencies, or people just get fed up and leave, and then you actually have those resources used against Canada.
Are they fairly resilient, those agencies, to various ideologies from different presidents?
Historically, the agencies are very resilient. They're very good culturally at withstanding interference. Even with a new director or a chief, they can still maintain that core business independent of that. But what's happening is there are appointments that are going below that executive level in various agencies.
There certainly is, and uncharted waters ahead for Canada. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Mercedes.